We don't show Holy Ghost in the church. We show Holy Ghost at home with our neighbors. We show Holy Ghost in our offices. How we think, how we reason, how we go in, how we come out. But John chapter 3 verse 17 to 18, put it to well. John chapter 3 verse 17 and 18. 17, 18.
For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world.
Oh.
But that the world through him might be saved. He that believeth on him is not condemned.
Okay.
But he that believeth not is condemned already, because he had not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God.
Amen. He that believeth on him is not condemned. But to believe, you have to prove that you believe. There's an action that follows your belief. A sister that has received God in her heart, her dressing will start to show. Her talk will start to show. It is easy to start from the outward, but it is better to start from the inside. You may remove your earrings, but in your dream you are wearing big ones. Better wear it back. Amen. Wear it back. You may remove your cortex. Is that cortex they call it? Painted nails, fixed eyes. Those ones are the fixed that they look like witches and wizards. Yes. You may stop using them, but in your dream, anytime you see yourself, that's how you are identified. That's who you are. Amen. That's who you are. Until that Holy Ghost sink right deep in the heart. And when the Holy Ghost comes, he will make you act the way you're not supposed to act, or the way you don't used to act. Peter prayed for somebody and miracle took place. But one night he removed his sword and cut somebody's ear. It's not part of the work of the Holy Ghost. Then Jesus said, he said, Peter, when thou had converted, so you are not yet converted. Where is Brother Brian? We are enjoying it. So they should do something about it. Amen. Blessed be the name of the Lord. So Jesus is talking about condemnation. What condemns you. Your unbelief condemns you. But what is unbelief? Unbelief is the only sin that takes a person to hell. Not fornication. Not adultery. No. It is unbelief. It is the root. It is the tree that grows and produces every other thing. Unbelief is there. Amen. Unbelief is, Brother Branham said in this message, the revelation of the seven church ages. He said, you say you have the Holy Ghost and you are fornicating, you are lying, you are doing those things. He said, no, that is not how the Holy Ghost behaves. You have a religious spirit. It's a religious spirit. It's not the Holy Ghost. Every servant will work for his master. Because number one, God will never say, brother, I'm testing you. Satan will never say, sister, I'm tempting you. Life is, as we wake up, we close. We wake up again, we close. Every word we say, every thought we think, we are planting seed. Seed. It will germinate. As we travel, you will travel to some point, you will turn back and start harvesting what you have planted. Amen. Are you following me? Unbelief brings condemnation. But if you believe, you may not even, if you believe, then that belief will help suppress all other enemy, whether within or without. Praise the Lord. I know you are stretching to hear. Amen. But like I said, I will not stay long on this because already we cannot even answer those that are following us. Look at the scripture. Verse 18. Read that again. Verse 18. John 3:18.
He that believeth on him is not condemned. But he that believeth not is condemned already.
Why?
Because he had not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God.
It is centered around the name. What are we to believe? The name. What's about the name? The revelation behind the name. Someone made a statement yesterday, which is something we believe too. If your pastor is not going in the rapture, you can't go. So you need to check your pastor. Because you have submitted yourself. So it's not a thing whereby you pretend. That's why you shouldn't go to churches anyhow. Plant a tree. No, trees they don't easily die. I think you know. Even from flower. Okay. Plant a tree. Say to that tree, water the tree to grow. Or say to that tree, you are dead. You are finished. You are dead. You are finished. You are dead. Every day, you are dead. You are finished. That tree will die. Because the original word, actually, the original seed, the word. And you say conveniently what you are from the inside. That's what you say more. I was here for counseling. I hope you are not Mongolians. Many of you have heard the history of Mongolians. Genghis Khan. It is the thunder that made him overpower the people. Because he learned a secret that these people are always afraid of thunders and lightning. When they were fighting, they were strong soldiers, but when they fight and the rain start to fall and thunder strike, they would drop their battle and hide. So he kept his battle in April when they were fighting, when rain will fall. Gathered them. Praise the Lord. Take note of this. I was counseling somebody, and the person said, God is not fair. That he had believed God for something, and that thing has taken time and has not materialized. Take note what he said. God is not fair. He had believed God for something. And he said he believed it and he walked towards it. Hello, sir. Let me address my brothers. God is a God of order. Amen. This is how God bless plan. Plan is different from work. This is the blessing that God has for your plan. It gives you an opportunity to work it out. Hello? Hear what I'm saying? You have a plan. The way God can bless that plan is to give you an opportunity to work that plan. Plan don't turn to money without work. Except it's 419. Take note what I've said to you. I say this directly from what the Holy Ghost ministered to me to tell the brother. Plan is good. But if you don't work the plan, Nigerians are good planners. We have policies in this country. Before I was born, you can ask the elders. They have been planned. And they had money. Money is not what you need. Amen. Who have not seen money? Money is not what you need. May God bless you. If the blessing of God is with you, be able to sustain. To sustain a blessing is more important than even having that blessing. Because if you are a good sustainer, you will help those who have blessing to sustain their blessing and you'll be blessed. There are kings without brains, you know? So they have what they call advisors. So if the advisor comes to the king's palace, will it be a pauper? What is his work? He might tell the king one thing a year, but he's his trusted advisor. As long as he has said one thing correct, if you tell him 10 lies, he still believes it because the first one he said was correct. So let our young men wake up and cheer up. Cheer up and go to work. Well, I'm going to tell you when I'm switching the subject. What's the time? 8:04. Okay, just give me 5 minutes to land this subject of believing. Because we have to know how to believe. One time I said that most Africans don't know how to repent. Talked about that many times. Don't know how to repent. They think that repentance is something that you are compelled to repent, and you come back again tomorrow, you repent. To repent. You have to have strong will. You have to have the grace to resist. When you get married, you have made up your mind that you will not jump with women any longer. It's not about you becoming a Christian or not. As a young man, when you get married, or when you decide to marry, you have said that you have come to the final boss. It's not about you being a Christian or not. It's to be true to what you have confessed or what you have professed. In other words, the Bible talks about trust breakers. When you make an agreement and you break that agreement, you are not even fit to be counted among people of God. Amen. Praise the Lord. So, then you now see people, they live anyhow, yet they are married. Now it brings poverty. It makes your money to turn to ashes. Not money, your wealth to turn to ashes. Before your eyes, your things are scattering. Because there are strange women around you. I leave them 10 years behind, but their spirit is still with you. And it's only the word of God that can clean it. Not receive it. Nothing he do you. You turn, finish, and fall down. You stand up, you are still where you are. The words that I speak unto you, they clean you. That's what Jesus said. It's the word that make you pure. Because the word is pure water. It washes you with pure water. What brothers and sisters are like. So I switch now. Answering a question. If you can get the question offhand. The marriage question. Very important. Thank God. Let rain. He has also finished preaching. You hear his message. His message was very straight. Wash your clothes when there is no rain. That was the message. Amen. And dry them when the rain has stopped. Simple message. I hope you understood the message. But don't give your life to the rain. Just that question, you should have it in your mind. The question about marriage.
What are the steps?
Louder.
Sir, what are the steps to a Christian relationship?
Answer, leave that one. That one no be marriage. You never marry. Relationship. There's a question you wanted to ask. Younger sister marry
Sir,
before.
Can a younger sister marry before her elder sister?
Okay, I'm going to put this together to this question. Why I'm talking about this question is because this is the third time this question is coming to me. And I've been promising. I don't have the time to sit down to answer this question by writing. I have promised to answer this question verbally, so anybody can refer back. Amen. How many of you heard that question? Lift up your hand if you heard the question. Because from the church came from families. Every individual here came from a family, correct? If we don't deal with certain things rightly, we will go back and behave wrongly in our families. And that's why the church is the original family. Amen. Did you hear the question? Can a younger sister marry before her elder sister? What do you say? Lift up your hand. If you say yes, lift up your hand. Camera showed them. Okay, keep down your hand. If you say no, lift up your hand. Now, people will go say no, they are elder sisters. Or they love elder sisters. If you say no, lift up your hand. Everybody didn't lift up their hand in the first place. Now, nobody is lifting up his or her hand. And we're in the church. I'm just reminding you that it's not a good place to lie. Amen. So if everybody has lifted up his hand, then don't for me to answer the question. You know the answer. Praise the Lord. Now listen to this. Let me ask you a question, sir. Can the younger sister die before the elder sister? Why? Why? I don't understand. Usually we should keep let us be, let our balance, our weights be equal. Amen. Okay, I want to say this. Please, in the church of Jesus Christ, there's nothing like that an elder sister, like a younger sister, if the one has seen her partner, she should marry. Because by this, I've seen elder sisters that keep refusing suitors and keeping the younger sisters in the hostage. Especially in the West here, what I call the West, the Yoruba land. Amen. Now, that should be ruled out. The Church of Jesus Christ does not have such culture. Don't have that tradition. Amen. When a sister, when a brother, okay, a brother, maybe my son, goes to someone and say he has seen the woman he wants to get married to. And then he now gives me a condition that he's waiting, that he is not going to get married. I will give him another wife. And I'm growing old. And my son, he says, he's waiting. Because the elder sister of that, in fact, maybe she has 4 elder sisters and she is 5th. And the young man will live his life and be praying, Lord, give Chinye husband. Give Nkem husband. Give Idara husband. Give Bosse husband. No! That prayer does not count. He that findeth a wife, if you find, you obtain favor. You can't suspend your favor. That is one. Let me bring this. I also came. Brethren, there was a time this trend was coming up where young men, they want to marry what they call working class ladies. Hello? Is it true? Okay, please, if I may ask, what is the opposite? What could be the opposite of a working class lady? Amen. Now, you see that we have deviated from the message of God. Today we have men who, from the start to the finish, their wife does everything. From the start to the finish. I'm not talking about retired men. I'm talking about young men. From the start to the finish, their wife does everything. It's not right. And let me tell you a secret. These women will suffer, grow weak, die. They will marry another woman. Maybe this subject is supposed to come on a Sunday. But let me talk about it here. Let me help you. How many of you have read the story of Brother Abraham? If you have, lift up your hand. Good. I have not. Please. Sunday school teachers. Not a bad thing. Where are you guys? Not a bad thing if you need to understand who the prophet was. Just take it as a subject. It's just 2 weeks. Just take book 1 and read it. Let the people just see in a book review. Let's do book review on that. A wife is a priceless. Are you hearing me? Do well. Let me tell. Oh my God. I don't understand. Listen to me. If I wake up, I say, I have young men living with me in the house. I wake up, some of them are still sleeping. I just remember, I say, is this how they are going to take care of their wives? Sleeping at 7 o'clock, at 8 o'clock. You should rise up, go out and start making that money for that woman that will come and eat it. Don't now telling me that the wife that I must marry must have BSc, must have this. You know this. Who can't you train somebody in your life? Yes. Will it be wrong if you train somebody? Praise the Lord. Look, whoever asks the question, you are hearing me. You are hearing me. You are listening. Amen. When a woman finds a wife, finds when they some American people will say, hey, no, it's a slip of tongue. When a young lady, when a sister, when a girl, when a woman finds a husband, or when the husband finds her, amen, her sorrow has ended. Don't tell me that's how it should be. That's what it is. Because none of us is the defaulter. If we were yesterday, we'll repent tonight. Yes. Yes. Brothers, let me tell you. It is laziness. The men have used the country's situation to interpret their laziness. Yes. Young men. That do not have 30-year plan ahead. 30 years from today, they don't have the plan. One of the preachers that is going to come from Uganda. As a young man, he just married and he decided to move away to a cheaper place, to a thick village, to a bush. He went and with his little money, he bought a small portion. He started farming and increased. Today, he's a great man and he's not even yet in his 55. And somebody sitting there, you will make it. What? You will not make anything. If you don't rob, and you rob once, the second one, they will catch you. 419, I thank God for Buhari. I see that he is dying. No, 419 is closing. Oh. No. The man has done well. That one, there is no road there. You can get the money, except you are getting 35,000 naira or those that you can collect cash. Bring the money cash for me. If it's going through bank, you can't get it. You are following? I'm looking at crime fighters every day. I bring people in the house, I bring my daughters, I say, listen to this. You have to know. Do not, and I'm saying to men, I'm going to speak about the sisters also. Listen to this. God made you the head. You must find your head out. A man who is quarreling every time with his wife. Amen. I love what Brother Pierre said here. He preached it somehow here, somehow. He just preached it somehow. And that's what I'm just preaching on now. Listen. If you have a fortune somewhere, let the fortune rest. Abraham kept gold that he didn't need to use. So he kept it until the time the gold was useful was when Jacob came. That gold was transferred to Isaac, it was transferred to Jacob. And that was the gold that Jacob gave to go and buy food in Egypt. You hear what I'm saying now? When it is not needful, you have eaten breakfast. At 2 o'clock, you're still feeling heavy. Must you eat? As it is done in heaven, so it's done on earth. You want to, I must eat. You mustn't eat, brother. You don't. Because you know that one can go for tomorrow. No savings. Pastor, there is inflation. How do we save? There is inflation for people of the world. Let me tell you. The mind of entrepreneurship is not there. A brother in this church, a brother met me and told me that he got a small farm. And people are farming for him. Say, how do you manage? Do you know what this is? The cost of people farming for him, because he's in the village, he's not up to 15,000. They have, apart from what he bought, the labor he has paid and he's waiting. Brother, what are you saying? And yet this person that is doing this has got a job. But some other persons don't do anything. They want to manifest overnight. Listen, this is not even Christ Embassy where you just bring money and throw into somebody's account and say you have paid tithe, that they will not ask you question. People who brought, there's nobody I don't ask. If I see an alert, up to 2 days ago, I saw an alert on my phone and I started calling people because that alert had no name. People that are listening to me, they know what I'm talking about. I started calling. Did you send any money to? No. Did you? Until they get to one place, I say, whoever sent this message, please, I want respond to me. Respond to me. Not a foolish pastor. I'm hungry, but that's not what I eat. Ask Pastor Joseph Oche sent you something to give to me. One time. I kept it until the day he came here. It was more than 7 months. I said to him, do you know this envelope? He said, yes. I said, now you and I can share it. This is the offering you sent to me. And since I don't know what you believe, and you don't agree with what I believe, I had to wait. I can't reject your gift, but it was here. I hungry turn everywhere that money was. You know how I kept the money in the office? Even if you go there, you will not see it. I plaster it. Don't go and check it now. It won't be there. I plaster it under the... No, you know when you draw the drawer up, like I put plaster it there. So if you draw the drawer... I spoke with Pastor Joseph Oche this morning. I was talking to him and reminding him those things. Because if you have met God, there must be an instruction that He has given you concerning marriage. He must give you instruction concerning money. He must give you instruction concerning ministry. So that's why when people just come and start to talk about ministry with me, I just laugh. You are just mocking yourself. When I talk about ministry, I'm not talking about church. If I resign today from being a pastor, my ministry has not ended. It gives me more ample time to do the work I'm supposed to do. And one of these days it will happen when the pastor come. I always say, when the right pastor come, I will shift and stand. the pastor will take over. Doesn't matter how much I've spent here. He's got the reward, and God is not wicked. He's over rewarding me too much. The one that I'm not even merit. So that's what I'm saying here. Let men be men, so that their prayers can be answered. We have too much strength to quarrel. Our wives. Too much power. If you were working from morning till night, where will you have the strength? You come back, the woman will be doing you everything. You won't even hear. You just sleep, waking up for the next day. That is the truth. Then now you now look at it that women are angels. Praise the Lord. I have nothing to say about sisters today. Amen. No, it's the truth. This is where the question was coming. Then, secondly, somebody was attacking a particular marriage. I think that question was sent to the group also. And it's a younger person marry an older lady. Is that so? Those of you are in the group. Did you see the question? I said, then those who they call me personally, but I refuse to come to the group to talk about anything yet. Because some of those questions are trapped. In the sense that there was a marriage somewhere, and they have used their eyes to gauge something. Amen. When I go to conduct marriages, I'm not looking. Why am I looking at the bride? Am I the person who want to marry her? Amen. So some people are better observers. They just come, they just look at her leg. They say, this leg might have seen 26 Christmas. Amen. Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. Now, I will say this. There is no direct scripture to say that cannot happen. Amen? But scripturally, Adam was first formed, then Eve. Look at all the marriages. There was a gap of 6, 10, even more years. Do you know that Jacob, when he was getting married, was how old? He was 97 years. He was 77 years. And his wife was about 25, 30 years. Okay, let me say this. I was in Singapore one time praying for people on the prayer line. Then one man just walked up to me. If I calculate his age, if I miss it, the man should be maybe 70, 73. I said, sir, what do I pray for? For where he's paying? He said, nothing is paying him. That he has struggled, he has made all his money. Now he wants to marry. I mistakenly laugh. Then my host now say, I have embarrassed him. I say, in my place, when somebody reaches age, he starts to choose his grave. What is done with what is wrong with this man? He said, no, here, this time that our life starts. So he has struggled, he has gotten all the money. Now he wants to look for the woman that he will spend it for. That's what I'm talking about. Amen. Praise the Lord. Yes. So scripturally, Abraham, he was 75, Sarah was 65. Adam was first formed, then his wife. God did it in such a way that the man comes, obtain his domain, maintain his domain, and teaches the wife. This is where this should be. Every man should do that. Listen. When people now claim that women don't have Holy Ghost, they are lying. These women have Holy Ghost because sometimes most of these women were there when you bought even your first trouser. Yes. They know when you bought the brown shoe. They were there. They saw you for buying the first. They were there. Then they still submit. Then you say they don't have Holy Ghost. They have Holy Ghost. If it is in Israel till today, those young men, those of our Nigerian men who go to Israel to work, once they entangle a woman and say that he wants to befriend them and marry them, if the woman was working, she stopped working. You face you must finish that your money. Ask. This thing I'm saying, ask about it in Israel. Once the woman say, somebody say, as I'm seeing you, you are going, you are coming, I'm looking at you. Okay, you are looking. You don't look finished. Now, I'm going to resign. She will resign the next day. After she asks you, what do you do? Your salary? Okay. If the salary is not enough, she will tell you how to go and, please, go and step up because my needs are very... The same thing, even I see that. Nobody have told me, but I look at people from the Middle East. They are like that. Many places that go in the Middle East, no woman is doing anything. But you have to give them a car, you have to give them house help, you have to give them everything. And here we see women carrying things in the street, rushing in the morning, waking up, going out, waking up, running in, coming in. My sisters have Holy Ghost. God bless them. God bless them, but then God bless you to work hard. Amen. Do you know who I am? Do you know who I am? No. Let us know who you are too here. You say, do you know who I am? Do you know? In those days, when our forefathers went to marry our mothers, even some of our mommies that are here, they will tell you that when their husband came, they shake coins in their pocket. Ding, 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 ding. Then the man said, you know that he's enough. He's capable. And tell some lies. That car that is there, I don't want to drive it, but it's mine. Amen. They have to see something because they have to see something. By calling them to come and inherit your kingdom. You hear all the things we say, even to half of my kingdom. You, what will you give? Half of what? Yes! If they had no kingdom, would they say even ask anything, even half of the kingdom? If I ask my wife, say ask anything, she will just be laughing at me. And I interpret it and say, because it's too much, she doesn't know what to ask. Praise the Lord. Don't go and say ask anything, you don't finish. Because you have no kingdom to share it into two. Praise the Lord. Now, for the sake of respect, I do not subscribe to young men marrying elderly ladies. Because, for one, whether you like it or not, even the women grow faster than men. That's true. Such marriages will always have problems at the end. If you have not sinned, I have sinned. I've heard women say, am I your mate? Even when their husband senior them. I know what I'm saying. The people are wonderful people. But amen. I know what I'm saying. But now, not to talk of when she's older. That's one. Two, I was talking with my wife today, and she talked about somebody whose wife is working in the same office with the husband. I said to her, it's not good. Good like that. Amen. A woman, I don't want them to hear that, but let me tell you, a woman cannot respect the man if he knows all about him. Am I lying? Can I answer again? Not talk to robot. Have 1 naira, I tell your wife, 1 naira. Have another one, I say, my wife is 1 naira. Before you bring the other 1 naira, she said, where is the 1 naira? Amen. Is it not because of your 1 naira you want to do shakara? She needs it, but she still speak like. We are not doing one science here. Truth is this, that you have your own government in your inside. That's the truth. Amen. But be transparent as you can. Amen. The man must always have a setback. Because the woman loves surprises. Praise the Lord. Amen. If the two persons are walking in the same place, it takes the Holy Ghost for that woman respect them. And all of this, Brother Branham said, is because of the trouble of the world today. The woman is supposed to be at home. You go and walk and bring for her. That's what the Bible says. But today, because every job, before they take one man, they have taken 5 women. That's the situation we find ourselves. Then that's why you have to wake up and become creative. You have to wake up to creativity. Because God gives you the brain. And He does not give you for anything. You can manifest if you put yourself to work. Some people are still sleeping. They ask about their age. They are still sleeping. Sleep and wake up at 9 in the morning. And you pray for 5 hours. The God you are praying to has gone out with people who are walking. It is when God closes with His work that you come back and check your prayer. Amen. Yes. I'm telling you, wake up. Wake up. I saw what Pastor Twee said it. He said it here. When I went to his place, I see the way he lived. He would say to this brother, what are you doing? He said, I don't have a job. I'm looking for a job. He said, come, I have 1 plot of land there. Don't go beyond this plot. Farm. Farms it. Eat from there. Sell it. He said, I only give to those who already have. So that they can give to others. But if you give to somebody who don't have, he will swallow it, and then after he will swallow you. That's what it is. You encourage poverty. It's not right. Go learn from the ant. Wake up and walk. Like in those days, Calabar men, they have 1 trouser, 3 girlfriends. You hear what I said? 1 pair of trousers, 3 girlfriends. Yes. How can they survive? Amen. Can't walk that way. In the overall, let the man not look for a privileged wife. Because the husband should have rule over his wife. Praise the Lord. One last one. I'll just make a point. Who are you? Try to dig the past of one that God justified. Mortal. Praise the Lord. This sister can be married. No, that one cannot be married. Who says she can be married? What's the problem? Are you do you know her past? What you should be checking is her salvation true? If God has confirmed her faith and given her the Holy Ghost, you will see it. There will be testimonies in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. The truth shall be established. Praise the Lord. You will see it. If she's pretending, you will also see it. Christ is a place of refuge. There are people who have made mistakes, who have lived anyhow, whatever. Even some people who have made mistakes have not lived anyhow. There are people who stay under the covering of a church, do demonic things. If the Lord open your eyes, you will faint. That's one thing I respect, Pastor Billy Joseph. Amen. A song says, and none will ask what they have been, as provided their ropes are. If the rope is person accepted Christ, then that person becomes pure. Praise the Lord. The Lord grant us grace. Amen. In the name of Jesus Christ. Students have now. I was saying this with Brother Richard Gann yesterday when we were talking. We're looking at the state of Israel with respect to the dates, May 14th and 15th, the birthday of the nationhood of Israel. That if these 2 weeks pass, end of May, there's no major thing that happened. Very clear that the Lord give us time. Push some more years. Amen. Bags are packed. Bags should be packed. Even as our bags are packed, we are planting and harvesting. Amen. You following what I'm saying? Those who are ripe to marry should marry. If they refuse to marry, they will fall into sin. And that will be the worst. Amen. So if somebody, all these things that they're saying, I'm praying for life partner. I'm praying for life partner. You are praying. Somebody who wants to marry, pray with one eye closed. Not 2 eyes like me who have married. I know my wife is there. If I pray, I serious, I pray. But if you are not married, you pray like this. You pray. I shall pray, Lord Jesus, could she be this girl? Lord, not that they just close 2 eyes like, what are you doing? My brother, yes, because He will close eye in the church and pray, and then go and bring me redeemed girl. I will scatter two of you. Carnal reasonings, my people. Yes. Pray as you are praying. Don't close all your eyes. Pray and be watching. Pray and be watching. Watch and pray. Pray and be watching. So that we don't give us problems. This is an important matter. Praise the Lord. Amen. So when that is done, let our lives continue. We pack our bags. Now, we're going to be eating. We're going to drink. We're going to sleep. Why waiting for the coming of the Lord? Is that true? May the Lord help us. In the name of Jesus Christ. Do you believe? Has God spoken something to you? May the Lord grant us grace. God bless you. Let's take a song. It's going to be wet today as we go back home. Please, I want to know if the elders or deacons have made plans to go and see the brother at Maryland. Let us know after service, please. If not, we choose people, empower them today, let them go there. Because we raised an offering. I believe that offering is still with you people. Send it to him in a way. Hallelujah. In the hollow of his hands, oh, in the hollow, what number? Hollow of his hands, I am saved. I am saved. Why God himself doth hold me in the hollow of his, what number? Hollow of his hands, in the hollow
288
of his hands, 288 in the hollow of his hands. I am safe, I am safe. Why God himself don't hold me, oh, in the hollow of his, the hollow of his hands, in the hollow, oh hallelujah, of his hands, hallelujah, in the hollow of his hands, yeah, I am saved. Why God is hold me in the hollow of his hands. The hollow of, one more time, sing it right now. In the hollow, let's bring our offerings of his hands, of his hands, oh Lord, in the hollow of his hands. I am saved, I am saved. Why God himself doth hold me, he holds me in the hollow, yes, of his, the hollow, in the hollow, hallelujah, of his hand, hallelujah, in the hollow safe. Why God Himself holds me. He holds me in the hollow of His, the hollow of His hands. In the hollow, hallelujah. Saved, why God Himself doth hold me. He holds me in the hollow of His hand. Let's rise, stand to pray. Just before I pray, so need to say this. My heart desire, like we've seen, if we are believers, we need to live by examples. Amen. One time in the Church of Singapore, a sister bought some gifts, necessity it was, for another sister, and she passed that gift through someone else. He doesn't want that sister to know that she wanted to be neutral. She in fact passed it through the pastor or through the deacon at that time. Look around and do good. That you may also attract good. Favor somebody. Let God also favor you. Amen. I like us to have the spirit of sharing. Something as small as slippers that sells for $150. Toothpaste, nail cutter, whatever it is. Whatever it is. The Lord will see us through. Every difficult situation that you find yourself, may the angel of the Lord come to rescue right now. In the name of Jesus Christ. What is rightly belonging to you, no man shall tamper with it. The Lord open doors of favors in your life. He will bless you and make you become a blessing. The power of God give you victory. Victory in all areas. In the mighty name of Jesus Christ. The work of your hands will not be destroyed. You that have idea, your idea will not die. The Lord grant you the grace and bring reasonable people that will get your ideas to work. In the name of Jesus Christ. I pray for every husband here. The Lord, anoint them to be great. May they be great towards their wife. To their wives in the name of Jesus Christ. I pray for every woman that is under stress. May the Lord bring deliverance. In the name of Jesus Christ. Oh, Father, we give you praise. Lord, those that ask these questions, oh God, give them an understanding. May they not, oh twist questions out of questions. May they see that though we have spoken this thing lightly, we have even had humor in it, but Lord, you have spoken to somebody. May they be satisfied with the answer that God gives. In the name of Jesus Christ. If their life had walked in the opposite direction, may you give them the grace to change. Thank you, Heavenly Father. Bless us as we go. Bless Brother Joseph and strengthen him in the hospital and bring him out, oh God. May none of his part of his body be destroyed. Thank you, Father. Thank you, King of Glory, for all believers everywhere. Thank you for everything. Glory be to your name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.